We always hear about how justice is supposed to be blind, right? Like the
Yeah.
Department of Justice is supposed to be totally impartial.
Yeah, the idea is that everyone's equal under the law.
Exactly. So when you hear about a new attorney general maybe putting together an enemies list right off the bat, well, it makes you wonder.
Definitely raises some red flags. What's really going on here?
That's exactly what we're diving into today. We've got this YouTube video from Glenn Kirshner, and he's making some pretty strong claims. He's saying that Pam Bondi, the new AG, promised during her Senate hearings that she wouldn't create an enemies list.
Right, that was a big part of her confirmation.
But Kirshner's alleging that basically the minute she stepped into office, she went back on that promise.
And we have to consider the context too. While Bondi said no to an enemies list at her confirmation, there were reports later from NPR that she was planning to align the DOJ with Trump's priorities.
So you've got that kind of looming in the background.
Exactly. It makes you question if there was political influence at play.
For sure. So today, we're going to take a deep dive into this video and see what's really going on. What exactly is this new attorney general accused of doing, and what makes people think there might be an enemies list? Let's start with day one. Bondi reportedly issued a whole bunch of directives, 14 memos, all sent to Justice Department employees. Is that normal for a new AG? I mean, issuing some guidance right away.
Well, it's not unheard of for a new agency head to lay out their priorities, but what Kirshner emphasizes in the video is the sheer volume of memos, 14 on the first day, and even more important, the content of those directives.
So what was in them?
Some of them apparently reversed policies that were put in place during the Biden administration. That signals a pretty clear shift in direction. But what's really interesting, according to the video, is that other memos set up brand new initiatives.
Okay, so new policies being put into place. That's where things get interesting. Kirshner connects these actions to some executive orders that Trump issued, specifically the ones about the, how did he phrase it? Oh, yeah, the weaponization of the federal government, and also the efforts to combat anti-Semitism. What does the video say these connections mean about Bondi's actions?
Krishna's interpretation is that Bondi was immediately trying to align the DOJ with Trump's agenda. She was using those broad executive orders as a framework. One memo, which the video highlights, supposedly set up something called a weaponization working group. This group, according to the claims, was given a pretty wide-ranging task. They had to review the activities of every single department and agency that had any civil or criminal enforcement authority over the last 4 years.
Wow, every department, that's a huge undertaking.
Exactly, and that's what makes you think, okay, what's the real focus here? Then the video brings up the argument that Trump and Bondi have made a lot, that under Biden, the DOJ was unfairly targeting conservatives. And the investigations into Trump himself are held up as the main examples of that.
Right, they claim that Trump was unfairly targeted.
And that narrative of unfair targeting, according to the video, is basically the reason they're giving for this new level of scrutiny. Kirshner mentions the 2 federal cases against Trump that were dropped once he won his second term, the election interference case from 2020 and the classified documents case at Mar-a-Lago. What's the video's take on those cases being dropped, and how does that relate to the weaponization claims?
Well, the video says that Trump and Bondi's allies are using the fact that those cases were dropped as proof of weaponization. They're saying those investigations were politically motivated from the start and didn't have any real basis. But the video itself seems to strongly disagree with that assessment. Then it shifts to the alleged enemies list and who might be on it. And the video bases this mostly on what Trump has said publicly about his opponents.
Yeah, the video connects Trump's public criticisms to the people who might be targeted by this alleged list. It names people like Jack Smith, the former special counsel who led the Trump investigation. It also mentions Alvin Bragg and Letitia James, both state-level prosecutors who've brought legal action against Trump. And then there's the FBI investigators and federal prosecutors who are involved in the January 6 cases. What's the video's main concern about these people being included?
The main concern, as the video lays it out, is that Bondi's DOJ might be trying to use its power to go after these people as payback, basically targeting anyone who investigated or prosecuted Trump. The video points out that it's really unusual and maybe even improper to even be thinking about a list like this without what they call adequate predication. Can you explain what adequate predication means in the context of investigations? For our listeners who might not be familiar with the term.
Sure. Adequate predication basically means you have a good reason to start an investigation. You need credible information or evidence that suggests there might be criminal activity. What the video is getting at is that talking about or even seemingly creating lists of people to investigate just because they were involved in past investigations without any clear evidence of wrongdoing by those investigators themselves, well, that's a big departure from how the DOJ usually operates. It raises serious questions about whether things are being done fairly and with integrity.
Right. It's not about targeting someone just because they investigated someone you like. And to illustrate this point, the video goes into a pretty detailed account of the Mar-a-Lago investigation. It's presented as a kind of case study. Let's go through the timeline as the video describes it. It starts with Trump leaving office and taking classified documents with him. What does the video emphasize about this initial act?
The video makes it clear that these weren't just any documents, they were classified national security materials. It stresses that the government was trying to get back documents that legally belonged to the U.S., documents that Trump had no right to keep. Then, the video describes a period of negotiation where the government tried to get the documents back without any legal battles.
So they were trying to resolve it peacefully.
Yes.
But according to the video, those negotiations didn't exactly go smoothly. It suggests that Trump's side wasn't fully cooperating.
Oh.
And that led to a grand jury subpoena being issued. What does a grand jury subpoena mean in this situation?
A grand jury subpoena is a legal order that forces someone to give testimony or provide evidence. In this case, it was an order for Trump to return the classified documents. The video points out that even after the subpoena, not all the documents were returned, and allegedly, one of Trump's lawyers signed a statement, an affidavit, claiming they'd handed over everything.
So they said they'd given everything back, but the video then presents evidence suggesting that wasn't true, that classified documents were still being hidden at Mar-a-Lago. And that's what led the DOJ to get a search warrant. What's the legal standard for getting a search warrant, and why does the video emphasize this?
To get a search warrant, law enforcement has to prove to a judge that there's probable cause. They have to show that there's a good reason to believe a crime has been committed, and that evidence of that crime will be found at the place they want to search. The video really underscores that a federal judge looked at all the evidence the DOJ presented, decided there was probable cause, and only then issued the warrant. This is important because it goes against the claim that the search was unjustified or politically motivated.
So as the video presents it, the search of Mar-a-Lago was totally legal and justified. It was done to retrieve national security information that was being illegally held, even after a subpoena. Then the video highlights what happened after the search. Trump was indicted on multiple federal charges. What charges are specifically mentioned?
The video lists charges like illegally keeping classified documents, obstructing justice, and violating the Espionage Act. And it ends its discussion of the Mar-a-Lago case by strongly criticizing the idea that holding powerful people accountable for potential crimes, like what happened with this indictment, is somehow the same as weaponizing the Justice Department.
It's a very clear argument the video makes. The DOJ was just following the evidence and upholding the law, no matter who was being investigated. So let's put it all together. The main claim of this video is pretty explosive. It's saying that Pam Bondi, even though she promised she wouldn't, seems to have started doing things on her very first day as Attorney General that points to an enemies list. And this list, according to the video, is targeting people who investigated and prosecuted Donald Trump.
Right. And the video uses specific actions to back up this claim, especially the creation of that weaponization working group with its really broad mandate. Plus, there's the intense focus on people involved in the Mar-a-Lago investigation and the January 6th cases. The suggestion is that these people might now be facing scrutiny from the Justice Department, and it's all politically motivated.
Which brings us to a really crucial question. What could this mean for our legal system and the independence of the Justice Department if these things are really happening? How should we, as citizens, understand and judge claims of weaponization, and what needs to be in place to protect the DOJ from being used for political gain or revenge? It's a complicated issue with some really big implications for the rule of law.
Absolutely. It raises fundamental questions about fairness and accountability in our system of justice.
And it's a conversation that we need to keep having.
For sure.
So keep those questions in mind, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive.